she kept leaving bills on my doorstep, HOA fines, lawn violations, even threats to put a lien on my house. The problem? I never joined an HOA because this neighborhood doesn't have one. But Karen insisted she was the community director and that I'd better pay up or face the consequences. That's when I stopped being polite and started digging. I let her think I was just another quiet homeowner. Until the day I knocked on her door, badge in hand. What happened next? She collapsed to the ground before I even said a word. And that's when the real story began. I bought this house to start over. After my divorce and 12 years working nonstop for the government, I wanted quiet. No gated communities, no homeowner meetings, no nonsense. Just a nice little house on a tree-lined street with a porch big enough for coffee and peace. The listing was clear, no HOA. That was the selling point. And for the first few weeks, life was good. My son and I unpacked, neighbors waved, and I planted flowers out front. Then it started. A crisp white envelope taped to my mailbox. Violation: grass exceeds HOA height standards. I laughed it off. Probably a mistake. But the next week, it was a $75 trash bin fine. Then a late fee. Then $2,400 in backdated HOA dues. All signed by President Karen Simmons, Willow Bend HOA. I was confused. I had checked everything before buying. No HOA existed here. But when I asked my neighbor across the street, she just shrugged and said, "Don't argue with Karen. She runs this place whether it's real or not." I thought about reporting her, but something told me, watch her first. So I did, and what I found made my blood run cold. It didn't stop at letters. Karen started sending inspectors, just local guys she paid in cash, walking through my backyard with clipboards, taking pictures of my shed and patio furniture like they had legal authority. One even told my son to move his bike, or it'd be cited. Every time I asked for documentation, Karen waved a folder in my face filled with fake documents, HOA bylaws, architectural rules, penalty schedules, but none of it was filed with the county. I checked. She even claimed there was an emergency HOA amendment added 2 years ago that pulled my block into their jurisdiction. But no record of it existed. Not with the city, not online, not anywhere. And here's the part that hit hard. Some of my neighbors were actually paying her. Quiet, retired people who didn't want trouble. Single parents too busy to fight. I talked to one elderly woman who paid Karen almost $3,000 in roof compliance fees. When I asked her why, she whispered, "Because if I don't, she threatens to report me for code violations." That's when it clicked. Karen wasn't running an HOA, she was running a racket. A fake authority scam built on fear, fake paperwork, and silence. And I wasn't going to let her get away with it. So I started documenting everything. I wasn't just a homeowner anymore. I was building a case. Because Karen didn't know who she was messing with. And soon she'd find out. I kept calm, played the role, nodded at her threats, even pretended to misplace a payment envelope. Meanwhile, I started pulling records. Karen Simmons didn't just lack legal authority, she wasn't even who she said she was. The so-called HOA she claimed to lead had no registration, no tax ID, no legal standing, not even a registered mailing address. The website on her letterhead? Bought using a burner email linked to her husband's fishing business. She forged community signatures. She photocopied fake board member names, people who didn't live on our street. What she didn't know was that I'd spent the last decade working for the Federal Inspector General's office. My job? Investigating white-collar crime, fraudulent land deals, and forged public documents. I'd taken down corrupt developers, shady city planners, and entire phony real estate scams. I hadn't told a soul what I really did when I moved in. I just wanted to live quietly. But Karen was pulling people into something criminal, and I had a professional obligation now. So I opened a quiet case file. My son, smart as ever, set up a drive to organize evidence. Every letter she delivered, we scanned. Every person she sent to my home, we recorded. I checked title reports, zoning codes, even spoke with a county clerk under the radar. And then we found it, the smoking gun. Karen had formed a fake HOA LLC 7 years ago in another county under a different name, then dissolved it just before moving here. The same fine structure, the same signature style, the same scam. She'd pulled this before, and she thought she could do it again. But she'd made one mistake. She tried it on me, that I didn't go to the police. Not yet. I needed her to feel secure, confident, sloppy. So I kept playing along. When she left another letter with a $600 noise violation, I waved and smiled from the window. She smirked like she'd won. But behind the scenes, I filed the necessary paperwork to launch a quiet federal probe. I brought in a former colleague, Jessica, now at the DOJ. Together, we coordinated a small task team. Karen had no idea that for 2 weeks she was under full surveillance. My son and I used a drone to document her so-called inspections. One of her clipboard guys, a cousin on probation, paid under the table to intimidate homeowners. We even caught her forging lien threats on letterhead she printed at the local library. Then came the perfect opportunity. She scheduled a public HOA audit day at her house, inviting anyone with unpaid fines to come negotiate. She thought it made her look legitimate, but I saw it for what it was, a chance to catch her with physical evidence, collecting funds under a fake entity, and potentially using federal mail fraud. I RSVP'd with a fake concern letter, and on that Saturday morning, I arrived at her door dressed casually, just like any frustrated homeowner. My phone was wired. My badge was tucked just behind my wallet. Agents waited a few blocks away. She invited me in smugly, pointed to a pile of invoices, and started demanding immediate payment. That's when I pulled out the folder, full of copies of her forged letters, state registration fraud, previous dissolved LLC filings, and her fake website domain. She laughed nervously until I placed my federal badge on her kitchen counter. Her face drained of all color. She didn't say a word. She reached for her phone, then her knees buckled. She literally collapsed onto a chair, shaking, and when she asked, "Are you here to arrest me?" I said, "Not yet," because what came next would shake the entire neighborhood. I gave Karen 24 hours to comply, either admit the truth to every single resident she targeted, or face federal charges for mail fraud, forgery, false representation, and real estate racketeering. She didn't respond. The next day, I sent every neighbor on the block a letter, not a fake fine, but the truth. I explained the entire scam, attached copies of forged documents, and showed proof of the dissolved fake HOA LLC she ran years ago. At first, the neighborhood was quiet, eerily quiet. But by noon, a crowd had gathered outside her house. People holding crumpled fines, old letters, printouts of her fake bylaws. One woman, Ms. Darla, who'd lived here 30 years, stood shaking with rage. "She made me pay $9,000 over 5 years," she cried. Another man shouted. "She threatened to seize my house." Karen peeked from behind the curtains, but she didn't come out. That night, I turned in all the evidence, plus victim statements from 14 homeowners, to the Federal Property Crimes Unit. They added her case to an ongoing fraud investigation I hadn't known about. Apparently, Karen Simmons wasn't just running a local scam. She'd been doing this in different towns for years, changing her name slightly, moving from neighborhood to neighborhood, always just ahead of exposure. But this time, she pushed too far. The county filed charges the following week. Karen was arrested in front of her house at 6:45 a.m. No clipboard, no smirk, just silence. As the police car pulled away, the neighbors clapped, not out of celebration, but out of relief. For the first time in years, they weren't afraid to decorate their lawn or hang up holiday lights. We all started talking more, hosting cookouts, helping one another. and I finally felt like I belonged, not because I caught her, but because we'd all healed from what she built out of fear. Karen faced multiple felony charges: wire fraud, impersonation, illegal collection of funds, and document falsification. Her bail was denied. When her trial began, prosecutors uncovered something far bigger than we expected: a nationwide trail of fake HOA corporations, all linked back to shell companies she controlled with her ex-husband. Over $1.2 million in total funds collected over 10 years. My evidence was used in court. Every voice recording, every fake letter, even footage my son and I captured with the drone helped seal her fate. But the most emotional moment came weeks later, when Ms. Darla, the elderly neighbor Karen scammed the most, walked up to me with homemade peach cobbler and tears in her eyes. She said, "We knew something was wrong. We just didn't know we were allowed to fight back." That moment reminded me why I ever joined federal service to begin with. Not for power, not for badges, but to protect people like her. And just when I thought it was over, something strange happened. I got a voicemail. Unknown number, distorted voice. It said, "She wasn't the only one. Some of us are still watching you." Then silence. I traced the number. It pinged from a burner phone, registered in a different state, in a neighborhood where Karen once lived before. Which means this wasn't a one-woman operation. There's more. There's always more. And now that I've exposed her, someone else may be trying to cover their tracks. So, if you think this story ended with Karen's arrest, it didn't. We've only just scratched the surface. There's a bigger game here, and I'm not backing down. Subscribe if you want to follow what happens next. And tell me in the comments, what would you do if your neighbor tried to fake the law to control your life? Because you never know, your HOA president might be more than just annoying. They might be criminal.